The morning sun cast gentle rays through the crystal towers of New Harmony, capital city of the Kytherian Republic. Ambassador Veltar stood on his balcony, watching the peaceful gardens below where children of many species played together. The air smelled of blooming flowers and fresh water from the floating fountains. Veltar's people, the Kytherians, looked like tall, graceful deer that walked on two legs. Their large eyes were kind and gentle, made for seeing beauty in their perfect world. For 3,000 years, the Kytherian Republic had been a place of peace. No wars, no violence, no suffering. They had built a society based on art, music, and helping each other grow. The crystal cities on 12 different worlds were connected by peaceful trade routes. Scientists worked together to make life better. Artists created beauty that moved souls. Teachers shared wisdom freely. Even their technology was designed to heal and create, never to harm. On this perfect morning, Veltar was preparing for another day of diplomatic meetings. The Republic was planning to open new art schools and expand their music programs to distant worlds. Everything was as it should be. Then the alarm started. The sound was soft and musical, as all Kytherian technology was gentle. But Veltar had never heard this particular tone before. His assistant Mira ran onto the balcony. Her normally calm face was filled with fear. "Ambassador," she said, her voice shaking. "The Outer Rim. Something terrible has happened to Zephyr Colony." Veltar followed her to the communication center in the tower's heart. The walls were covered with screens, showing data from across the Republic. Usually the displays showed happy reports about successful harvests, new art projects, and children learning. Now every screen was red. "What happened to Zephyr?" Veltar asked. The head technician, an elderly Kytherian named Joran, turned to face them. His ears were flat against his head, a sign of great distress. "We lost all contact 6 hours ago. The last transmission was—" He stopped, unable to continue. "Show me," Veltar ordered gently. The main screen filled with static, then cleared to show a scene that made Veltar's blood turn cold. The beautiful gardens of Zephyr Colony were burning. Buildings that had stood for centuries were being torn apart by creatures unlike anything in the Republic's peaceful history. The attackers were massive insects, each one the size of a small building. They had too many legs and eyes that glowed with hungry light. Their mouths were filled with grinding teeth that could cut through metal and stone. They moved in perfect coordination like parts of a single mind. "The colonists?" Veltar whispered. "Gone," Joran said. "All of them. These creatures, they don't just kill. They consume everything. The buildings, the plants, even the ground itself. Nothing is left." As they watched, more reports came in. The next colony in the system had gone silent. Then another. The attackers were moving through Kytherian space like a disease, destroying everything in their path. "How many ships do we have?" Veltar asked, though he already knew the answer would not help. 47 vessels in the entire Republic," Mira replied. "But Ambassador, they are exploration ships. Science vessels. We have no weapons, no military training. Our people have never fought a war." Veltar stared at the screen as another world fell silent. The creatures were coming toward the core worlds now. At their current speed, they would reach New Harmony in less than 10 days. "Send a message to the Galactic Council," he ordered. "Request immediate military assistance." Hours passed. The Council's response came back cold and formal. They would consider the matter in committee. It would take weeks for a decision. Some council members suggested the Kytherians should negotiate with their attackers. Negotiate with what? Veltar asked the empty air. These things don't communicate. They just consume. More colonies fell. Beautiful worlds that had known only peace for thousands of years were stripped bare in hours. The creatures left nothing behind except empty rock floating in space. The Republic's small fleet tried to evacuate civilians, but there were too few ships and too many people. Millions were trapped on the outer worlds with nowhere to run. "There has to be someone who can help us," Mira said as they watched another red warning appear on the screens. Joran was working at his station, searching through every communication channel in the galaxy. "I'm sending requests to every known civilization. The Zenthi Empire says they are too busy with trade disputes. The Crystal Federation claims they lack the resources. The Machine Collective simply does not respond. What about the quarantined sectors?" Veltar asked desperately. Joran's ears twitched. "Ambassador, those regions are marked as extreme hazards. The species there are considered too dangerous for contact." "More dangerous than extinction?" Veltar gestured toward the screens showing his people's dying worlds. Joran hesitated, then began broadcasting on frequencies that had never been used by the Republic. These were the channels that led to the dark corners of the galaxy, where civilized species feared to go. "This is Ambassador Veltar of the Catherian Republic." He spoke into the transmitter. "Our worlds are under attack by an unknown enemy. They consume everything in their path. Our people are peaceful. We have no weapons, no armies, no way to defend ourselves. If anyone can hear this message, if anyone has the strength to fight these creatures, we beg for your aid. We offer everything we have in exchange for help. Please, if there is anyone out there who can stop this destruction, we need you now." The message went out into space, carrying the desperate plea of a dying civilization. For hours, there was only silence. The attackers continued their advance, leaving empty worlds behind them. Then, deep in a quarantined sector marked in galactic charts as extreme hazard, Death World inhabitants, something heard their cry for help. On a small blue planet circling a yellow star, beings that had never known lasting peace, creatures forged by millions of years of struggle and conflict, received the transmission. These were beings who had learned to fight not because they wanted to, but because their world had given them no choice. The message reached Earth. In the command centers of humanity's young space fleet, admirals and generals studied the transmission. They saw the peaceful Catherians being slaughtered by creatures that knew only hunger and destruction. They heard the plea for help from a people who had never learned to hate or hurt. Most of the galaxy's civilized species heard the same message and chose to look away. The Catherians had nothing valuable enough to risk a war over. The attacking creatures were too dangerous to fight, but humans were not most species. They had spent their entire evolutionary history fighting impossible odds. They had learned that sometimes the only way to protect what is good in the universe is to stand against what is evil, regardless of the cost. In the depths of space, humanity's small but determined fleet began to move toward Catherian territory. They did not know if they could win. They did not know if they would survive. They only knew that somewhere in the galaxy peaceful people were dying, and no one else was coming to help. The Deathworlders had heard the call, and they were on their way. Admiral Chen Martinez stood in the command center of Earth's Deep Space Station Alpha, watching the Catherian distress signal play for the third time. Around him, officers from Earth's United Fleet studied the data with grim faces. The images of peaceful cities being destroyed by insect-like creatures filled the room's screens. "Those poor people don't even have weapons," Commander Sarah Chen, the Admiral's daughter, said quietly. "Look at their ships. No armor, no shields designed for combat. They're like flying art galleries." Admiral Martinez nodded slowly. Humanity had been watching the galaxy from their quarantined corner of space for 20 years now, ever since they had developed faster-than-light travel. They knew about the peaceful civilizations out there, species that had evolved on worlds where survival was easy and cooperation was natural. Earth was different. Humans had evolved on a world where everything tried to kill everything else. Storms that could destroy cities, diseases that wiped out populations, predators that hunted in packs, earthquakes, volcanoes, floods, droughts. For millions of years, humans had survived by becoming the most dangerous predators on their planet. "Sir," Lieutenant Rodriguez called from the communication station. "I'm picking up more transmissions. The creatures attacking the Catherians are called Devourers. They're a hive mind species that consumes entire worlds." "What response has the galactic community given?" Admiral Martinez asked. "None, sir. The major powers are ignoring the distress calls. Some are even closing their borders to prevent Catherian refugees from entering their space." Admiral Martinez felt anger rise in his chest. In human history, they had seen this before. Evil advancing while good people stood aside and did nothing. His grandfather had told him stories about old Earth wars where entire populations were murdered while the world watched and remained silent. "They're afraid," Commander Chen said. "The galaxy sees the Devourers as too powerful to fight, and they see the Catherians as too weak to be worth saving." The Admiral looked at the screens again. A Catherian child was running through burning gardens while massive insect creatures destroyed everything around her. He thought about his own granddaughter, safe in her school on Earth, learning about art and science in a world that had finally found peace. "Analysis report," he ordered. Dr. Williams, the fleet's science officer, stepped forward with a tablet full of data. "The Devourers appear to be a hive mind species controlled by queen organisms. They reproduce quickly and adapt to local conditions. Their technology is biological rather than mechanical. They've consumed at least 15 Cytherian worlds so far. Weaknesses? Unknown, sir. No one has ever successfully fought them before. But there are some interesting observations. They appear to have evolved in sterile environments. Their immune systems may not be adapted to complex biological warfare. Also, they show no evidence of individual thinking. If the hive-mind connection was disrupted, General Thompson, head of the Fleet Marines, spoke up. Admiral, my analysis is different. This isn't about their weaknesses. It's about our strengths. Explain. Sir, these creatures evolved to fight civilizations like the Cytherians, peaceful species with advanced technology but no understanding of real warfare. The Devourers have never faced an enemy that evolved through millions of years of constant combat. Admiral Martinez turned to face the general. Continue. Humans don't just fight to win, sir. We fight to survive. We're persistence hunters who never give up. We can endure pain and keep moving when other species would die from shock. We understand pack tactics because we evolved as social predators. Most importantly, we know how to fight dirty. The room was silent as everyone considered this. Humanity's reputation in the galaxy was already dark. Other species saw humans as barely controlled predators from a nightmare world. If Earth intervened in this conflict, it would confirm every fear the galactic community had about Death World species. Sir, Commander Chen said carefully, if we do this, there's no going back. The galaxy will never see us as anything but dangerous killers. Maybe, Admiral Martinez replied, but what's the alternative? We let an entire civilization die because we're worried about our reputation? Captain Torres from the Engineering Corps raised his hand. Admiral, there's something else to consider. Earth's government specifically placed us in quarantine to prove we're not a threat. If we launch military action without authorization, I know the political cost, Captain. Admiral Martinez looked around the room at his officers. These were good people who had sworn an oath to protect Earth and its allies. The problem was that Earth had no allies yet. Humanity was alone in the galaxy, feared and isolated, but sometimes being alone meant you were the only one who could act. Personal opinion time, the Admiral announced, not as officers but as human beings. What do you think we should do? Commander Chen spoke first. I think about the children in those cities. If someone was attacking Earth and no one came to help us, how would we feel? These Cytherians asked for aid and everyone ignored them. That's not right, General Thompson nodded. I agree. We've spent 20 years trying to prove we're peaceful, but maybe being peaceful isn't the same as being good. Sometimes good people have to fight. Dr. Williams added, from a scientific perspective, if the Devourers succeed here, they'll grow stronger. Eventually, they might threaten Earth itself. It's better to stop them now while they're focused on someone else. Around the room, the other officers voiced their agreement. Not because they wanted war, but because they understood something the peaceful galaxy had forgotten. Sometimes the only way to protect the innocent is to destroy those who prey upon them. Admiral Martinez made his decision. We're going to need fast ships and volunteers only. Anyone who doesn't want to risk their career and possibly their life can stay behind with no shame. Not a single person in the room moved to leave. All right then. Dr. Williams, start working on biological weapons. General Thompson, prepare your Marines for boarding actions. Commander Chen, select our fastest ships and load them with everything we've got. Sir, what do I tell Earth Command when they ask for authorization? Captain Torres asked. Admiral Martinez looked out the window at the stars where peaceful people were dying, while the galaxy watched. Tell them we're going to do what humans have always done. We're going to stand between the predators and their prey, and if the galaxy doesn't like it, they can complain to us after we've saved some lives. 3 days later, the human fleet departed Earth space, 12 ships carrying 3,000 volunteers, heading toward a war zone that the rest of the galaxy was afraid to approach. They didn't know if they could win. They didn't know if they would survive, but they knew that somewhere in the darkness, people who had never harmed anyone were crying for help, and humans had never been able to ignore that cry, even when answering it might destroy them. The Death Worlders were coming, and they were bringing everything that had made them the most dangerous species on their violent planet. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Lyra system, and Captain Sarah Chen felt her heart sink. Through the bridge windows of the UES Defiance, she could see the beautiful blue world of Lyra Prime surrounded by a cloud of devourer ships. The enemy vessels looked like giant insects made of metal and flesh. They swarmed around the planet in perfect coordination, while smaller craft descended toward the surface like hungry wasps. Even from this distance, Sarah could see the glow of fires on the planet's surface. "Communication from the surface, Captain," Lieutenant Park reported. "It's Ambassador Veltar of the Kitherian Republic. Audio only. Put him through." The voice that came through the speakers was filled with desperation and hope. "Unknown vessels, this is Ambassador Veltar. If you have come to help us, please hurry. The evacuation centers are failing, and we cannot hold much longer." Sarah looked at the tactical display. Hundreds of Devourer ships between her small fleet and the planet below. Millions of Kitherian civilians trapped on the surface. The smart military choice would be to retreat and find a better battlefield. But humans had never been famous for making smart military choices. "Ambassador Veltar, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth vessel Defiance. We have come in response to your distress call. We are going to get your people out of there." There was a long pause. When Veltar spoke again, his voice was confused. "Captain Chen, your species is not in our database. What government do you represent?" "We represent Earth, Ambassador. We're humans." Another pause, longer this time. Sarah could almost hear the ambassador checking his records, trying to find any information about humanity. "Captain, I cannot find any reference to your species in galactic databases. Are you from one of the quarantined sectors?" "Yes, Ambassador. We're from what you call a death world." The silence that followed was heavy with fear. Sarah understood why. To the peaceful species of the galaxy, Deathworlders were nightmare creatures, violent predators who had evolved in hellish conditions and spread chaos wherever they went. "Ambassador," Sarah said gently, "I know what your people think about species like us, but right now we're the only ones who answered your call for help. We're here to protect you, not harm you." "I understand, Captain. Forgive my hesitation. Any help is welcome at this point." The tactical officer, Commander Brooks, leaned toward Sarah. "Captain, I'm reading massive Devourer movements. They know we're here. Estimate 200 enemy ships moving to intercept." Sarah nodded. "All ships, this is Defiance. Execute Alpha 7. We're going in hard and fast." The human fleet accelerated toward Lyra Prime, not trying to avoid the Devourer swarm but heading directly into it. To any observer, it looked like suicide. 12 small ships against hundreds of larger ones. But humans had learned long ago that sometimes the most dangerous place was also the safest. The Devourers expected enemies to avoid them, to fight from long range with advanced technology. They didn't expect anyone to charge directly into their formation. The first Devourer ships to intercept them were torn apart by concentrated human firepower. Earth's weapons were crude compared to galactic standards, but they were designed for one purpose: killing things efficiently. Railguns that fired solid metal slugs at incredible speed. Nuclear missiles that turned everything within kilometers into plasma. Energy weapons that cut through armor like it was paper. "They're not adapting," Commander Brooks reported with surprise. "The Devourers are still using the same tactics they used against the Kitherians. Because they've never fought anyone who fought back," Sarah realized. "All their experience is with peaceful civilizations." The human fleet carved through the Devourer formation like a knife through soft fruit. They reached Lyra Prime's atmosphere and began descent to the surface, leaving burning enemy ships in their wake. On the ground, the situation was even worse than Sarah had feared. The beautiful crystal cities were in ruins. Kitherian civilians, looking like tall, graceful deer people, were huddled in emergency shelters, while massive insect creatures tore apart everything around them. Sarah led a landing party to the largest evacuation center, where Ambassador Veltar was waiting. When she stepped out of the shuttle, she saw the ambassador take several steps backward, his large eyes wide with fear. Sarah understood his reaction. She was a human female, which meant she was a predator designed by evolution to hunt and kill. Her eyes faced forward for tracking prey. Her teeth were sharp for tearing meat. Her muscles were built for long chases and violent struggles. To a peaceful herbivore like Veltar, she must look like death itself. But Sarah also knew something about leadership. She stopped walking toward him and instead knelt down, making herself smaller and less threatening. She kept her hands visible and spoke in a calm, quiet voice. "Ambassador Veltar, my name is Sarah Chen. I know I look frightening to you, but I promise that my people and I are here to protect your civilians. We will not harm anyone who is not our enemy." Veltar's ears twitched nervously, but he managed to speak. "Captain Chen, I thank you for coming. But I must ask, How can we trust that you will not simply replace the Devourers as a threat to my people? It was a fair question. Throughout galactic history, Deathworld species had been known to conquer and enslave peaceful civilizations. Sarah thought about how to answer. Because Ambassador predators protect their pack, and right now you and your people are under our protection. That makes you part of our pack. To demonstrate her point, Sarah turned toward a group of Catherian children who were crying in fear. She approached them slowly, then sat down and began speaking to them in a gentle voice, asking their names and telling them stories about Earth's animals. The children, initially terrified, began to relax as they realized this scary-looking alien was being kind to them. Veltar watched in amazement. These creatures who looked like nightmares were acting like guardians. Dr. Williams, Sarah called to her science officer. What have you learned about the Devourers? The scientist approached with a tablet full of data. Fascinating species, Captain. They're a true hive mind controlled by queen organisms, but they have significant weaknesses. They evolved in sterile environments, so they have no resistance to complex biological agents. Also, their hive mind connection appears to be chemical rather than technological. Meaning if we disrupt the queen's pheromone signals, the entire swarm becomes confused and disorganized. Veltar leaned forward with interest. You have discovered their weakness in just a few hours? Our scientists have been studying them for weeks without success. Dr. Williams smiled grimly. Ambassador, your people evolved in paradise. You look for beauty and harmony in everything you study. We evolved in hell. We look for ways to kill things. The sound of weapons fire echoed from outside the evacuation center. Human Marines were engaging Devourer ground forces, and the battle was not going the way the aliens expected. The massive insect creatures had never faced an enemy that used explosives, poison gas, and coordinated small unit tactics. Captain, Commander Brooks reported over the radio, we've identified the Devourer command ship. It's a Queen-class vessel in high orbit. Sarah stood up, her mind already working on the problem. The Queen ship would be heavily defended, probably impossible to approach with conventional tactics. Ambassador, she said to Veltar, we're going to end this threat, but we need to reach that command ship. Do your people have any vessels that could get us close? Veltar's ears drooped. Captain, all our ships are designed for exploration and research. They have no weapons, no armor. It would be suicide to approach the Queen ship. That's all right, Sarah replied with a smile that showed too many sharp teeth. We specialize in suicide missions. She looked up at the sky where the Queen ship hung like a dark star above the burning planet. Somewhere up there was the creature controlling the swarm that had murdered millions of innocent people. Humans had always been good at killing things that needed killing. Captain Sarah Chen stood in the cargo bay of the UES Defiance, watching her Marines check their equipment one final time. Around her, 200 volunteers prepared for what was probably a one-way mission to the Devourer Queen ship hanging in orbit above Lyra Prime. Final equipment check, Sergeant Major Rodriguez called out. The Marines were wearing Earth's latest environmental suits designed for combat in hostile conditions. Each suit carried enough air for 6 hours, radiation shielding, medical injectors, and integrated weapons systems. Dr. Williams approached Sarah with a small metal container. Captain, the biological agent is ready. Modified Earth bacteria that should disrupt the Queen's nervous system, but someone has to get within 50 meters of her to deploy it. Sarah nodded and clipped the container to her belt. She looked around at the faces of her people, young men and women from dozens of Earth's nations, all volunteers who had left behind families and comfortable lives to answer the cry of strangers in the dark. Listen up, Sarah called out. I want everyone to understand what we're doing here. That Queen ship up there controls every Devourer in this system. Kill the Queen, and the swarm becomes just a bunch of confused bugs. But the ship itself is a fortress. Organic armor 3 meters thick. Internal atmosphere that will kill most species in minutes. And about 10,000 Devourer warriors protecting their Queen. She paused, looking at each face in turn. Anyone who wants to stay behind and help with the evacuation, speak now. No shame in it, not one person moved. Sarah smiled grimly. That's what I thought. All right, people. Time to show the galaxy what Deathworlders do best. The plan was simple in the way that only truly desperate plans could be. The human fleet would launch a direct assault on the Queen ship, drawing its defenses while Sarah's strike team used modified Catherian exploration vessels to approach from the planet's shadow. Once aboard, they would fight their way to the Queen's chamber and deploy the biological weapon. As their small craft approached the massive Queen ship, Sarah could see why no one had ever successfully attacked one before. The vessel was the size of a small moon, covered in organic weapons that could destroy anything that came too close. It looked like a giant insect made of metal and flesh, with thousands of smaller ships swarming around it. "Captain," Lieutenant Park reported from the pilot's seat, "I'm picking up massive energy readings from the Queen ship. It's preparing to fire some kind of weapon at the planet's surface." Through the viewport, Sarah could see the weapon charging, a massive organic cannon growing from the ship's hull, aimed directly at the largest Kytherian city below. If it fired, millions of civilians would die instantly. "Change of plans," Sarah announced. "We're going in now." The small craft accelerated toward the Queen ship, dodging defensive fire from the surrounding swarm. The Devourers had never faced an attack like this. Their tactics were designed for fighting peaceful civilizations with predictable strategies, not desperate humans willing to ram their ships into enemy targets. Sarah's craft smashed through the Queen ship's outer hull like a bullet through paper. The impact killed the pilot and half the strike team instantly, but the survivors were already moving. They blasted their way deeper into the ship's organic corridors, following Dr. Williams' readings toward the Queen's chamber. The interior of the Queen ship was like being inside a living nightmare. The walls pulsed like blood vessels. The air was thick with chemicals that would have poisoned most species, but human environmental suits were designed for Earth's most hostile environments. The corridors were filled with Devourer warriors, massive insects with razor-sharp claws and acid spit, but the Devourers had never fought humans before. Sergeant Major Rodriguez led the assault, his team moving through the corridors like a pack of wolves. They used tactics that the hive mind couldn't predict: explosives that brought down walls, gas grenades that filled chambers with poison, and coordinated fire that cut through enemy formations. "These things don't know how to fight individuals," Rodriguez reported, as his team cleared another corridor. "They're used to fighting as a hive mind against other hive minds. They can't adapt to small unit tactics." Sarah's group fought deeper into the ship, leaving a trail of dead Devourers behind them. The creatures kept attacking in the same predictable patterns, never learning from their mistakes. They had evolved to be perfect predators against peaceful civilizations, but they had no experience with species that had spent millions of years perfecting the art of warfare. "Dr. Williams, how close are we to the Queen?" Sarah asked as they fought through another wave of defenders. 200 meters, Captain. But there's something else. I'm reading massive biological activity ahead. I think the Queen is preparing to reproduce." Sarah felt cold fear in her stomach. If the Queen was creating new queens, the Devourer threat would spread across the galaxy. No peaceful civilization would be safe. They blasted through the final barriers and entered the Queen's chamber. The sight that greeted them was beyond description. The Queen was a creature the size of a building, part insect, part machine, part living nightmare. Her body was covered in organic weapons and communication organs that connected her to every Devourer in the system. Around her, dozens of eggs were beginning to hatch. New queens ready to spread across the galaxy and consume everything in their path. "Deploy the weapon," Sarah ordered. Dr. Williams activated the biological agent, releasing modified Earth bacteria into the chamber's atmosphere. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the Queen began to convulse as the alien microorganisms attacked her nervous system, but she wasn't dying fast enough. The new queens were almost ready to emerge from their eggs. In desperation, Sarah made a decision that would have shocked the peaceful galaxy but seemed natural to a human. She activated her suit's self-destruct sequence and ran toward the Queen. "Captain, no," Rodriguez shouted, but Sarah was already moving. The Queen turned toward her as she approached, massive eyes focusing on the small human who dared to challenge her. For a moment they stared at each other, the perfect predator who had consumed dozens of worlds, and the descendant of hunters who had never learned to give up. "You picked the wrong species to hunt," Sarah told the Queen. The explosion destroyed the Queen's chamber and sent shockwaves through the entire ship. Without the Queen's controlling influence, the Devourer swarm immediately became confused and disorganized. Ships crashed into each other as pilots lost coordination. Warriors on the planet's surface wandered aimlessly, no longer directed by their hive mind. On the surface of Lyra Prime, Ambassador Veltar watched in amazement as the Devourer forces suddenly stopped their organized assault. The creatures that had been systematically destroying his civilization just minutes before were now stumbling around like lost children. "What happened?" he asked Commander Brooks, who was coordinating the evacuation. "Captain Chen killed their queen," Brooks replied simply. "Without the hive mind connection, they're just animals." Veltar stared at the human commander. These Deathworld predators had willingly sacrificed their leader to save his people. It was the kind of selfless courage that the peaceful galaxy had forgotten could exist. In orbit above Lyra Prime, the massive Queen ship broke apart and fell toward the planet's atmosphere, burning like a falling star. The remaining human ships moved to rescue survivors from the strike team, but everyone knew that Captain Sarah Chen was gone. She had died as she had lived, protecting people who couldn't protect themselves, standing between predators and their prey. The galaxy would remember this day as the moment when the Deathworlders proved they were not the monsters everyone feared, but the guardians everyone needed. 3 weeks after the Battle of Lyra Prime, Ambassador Veltar stood in what had once been New Harmony's central plaza. The crystal towers still reached toward the sky, but now they were surrounded by temporary buildings made from human materials. Prefabricated medical centers, emergency shelters, and communication arrays that hummed with activity. The humans had stayed. That fact still amazed Veltar every morning when he woke up. These terrifying predators from a quarantined Deathworld had not only saved his people from the Devourers, but had immediately begun helping with reconstruction efforts. It made no sense according to everything the galaxy believed about Deathworld species. "Ambassador," a voice called behind him. Veltar turned to see Dr. Williams approaching with a data pad. The human scientist looked tired but satisfied. "I have the final casualty reports. How many did we lose?" Veltar asked, though he was almost afraid to hear the answer. "Across all 12 worlds? About 2 million Catherians. It's a terrible number, but it could have been so much worse. Without the evacuation efforts, you would have lost over 100 million. Veltar's ears drooped as he thought about the families that had been lost. But Dr. Williams was right. The majority of his people had survived because humans had arrived when no one else would help. And the human losses? Veltar asked quietly. 437 killed in action, including Captain Chen, another 100 wounded. Dr. Williams paused. They all volunteered, Ambassador. Every single one of them knew they might not come home. Veltar walked over to the memorial that the humans had built in the plaza's center. It was a simple black stone with the names of everyone who had died fighting the Devourers, both human and Catherian. At the top, in letters that caught the morning light, was written, Captain Sarah Chen, she stood between predators and prey. I don't understand your species, Veltar said honestly. You have the power to conquer us easily. Your technology is crude but effective. Your people are born warriors, yet you ask for nothing in return for saving us, Dr. Williams smiled sadly. That's because you're thinking like a peaceful species, Ambassador. You assume that because we can fight, we want to fight. But humans learned something over millions of years of evolution. The strongest predator is the one who protects the pack. A group of Catherian children ran past them, chasing a ball that bounced and changed colors. Among them ran a human child, the daughter of one of the engineers who had come to help with reconstruction. The Catherian children, who had been terrified of humans just weeks ago, now played games and shared toys with the small human girl. How long will your people stay? Veltar asked. As long as you need us, Dr. Williams replied. Admiral Martinez is setting up a permanent base in this system. We'll help you rebuild your defenses and train your people to protect themselves. This was another thing that confused Veltar. You're going to teach us how to fight? But we are a peaceful people. Violence goes against everything we believe. Sometimes peace has to be defended, Dr. Williams explained. You don't have to become killers like the Devourers were, but you need to be able to protect what you've built. A communication alert sounded from Veltar's personal device. He checked it and saw a message that made his eyes widen with surprise. What is it? Dr. Williams asked. A message from the Galactic Council. They want to meet with the human representatives immediately. Dr. Williams frowned. That can't be good news. 2 days later, Admiral Martinez stood in the council chamber on the neutral world of Concordia. Around him, representatives from 43 different species sat in judgment. The chamber was designed to intimidate, with soaring ceilings and seats arranged so that the accused stood alone in the center, while everyone else looked down at them. Admiral Martinez, the council speaker, a tall crystalline being called Rizek, began. You and your species have committed an act of war against the quarantine protocols established by this council. Human vessels entered restricted space without authorization and engaged in military action. Martinez looked up at the assembled representatives. He could see fear in their alien faces. Fear of what humanity represented, of the violence they had brought to the peaceful galaxy. Councillor Rezek, Martinez replied calmly. My people responded to a distress call from a civilization under attack. The Catherian Republic asked for help and we provided it. You violated the quarantine, another representative spoke up. This one was from the Zenthi Empire, a species that looked like walking flowers. Deathworld species are restricted for good reason. You have proven yourselves to be exactly what we feared, violent aggressors. We saved millions of lives, Martinez pointed out. By destroying another species entirely, Councillor Rezek responded. The Devourers are now extinct. You committed genocide. Martinez felt anger rise in his chest, but he kept his voice level. The Devourers were a plague that consumed entire civilizations. They had to be stopped. By you? The representative from the Crystal Federation leaned forward. Who gave you the right to decide which species lives and which dies? The same authority that gave you the right to decide which species deserves help and which doesn't, Martinez shot back. We received the Catherian distress call. We knew that no one else was coming. We chose to act, and now you expect us to welcome you into galactic society? Councillor Rizik's crystalline face showed disgust. After you have proven how dangerous you are? Before Martinez could answer, the chamber doors opened. Ambassador Veltar walked in, flanked by representatives from several other species that had been attacked by Devourers over the centuries. The gentle folk of Serenity 7, the crystal singers of Harmonia, the tree people of Verdant, Councillor Rezek, Veltar said formally. I invoke the right of testimony under Article 7 of the Council Charter. Rezek looked annoyed. Ambassador, this proceeding is about human violations of quarantine law. Your testimony is not relevant. With respect, Counselor, it is entirely relevant. Veltar walked to stand next to Admiral Martinez. This council is deciding whether humanity should be welcomed into galactic society or returned to quarantine. As the representative of a people who were saved by human intervention, I believe our experience is very relevant indeed. The chamber fell silent as Veltar continued. For 3,000 years, the Catherian Republic has been a peaceful member of this council. We have contributed art, science, and philosophy to galactic civilization. We have never asked for anything except the right to exist in harmony with our neighbors. He gestured toward the other representatives who had entered with him. The same is true for these species. All of us have been productive members of galactic society. All of us have contributed to the common good. Your point, Ambassador? Prezek asked impatiently. My point is that when we faced extinction, when the Devourers came to consume our worlds and our people, not one member of this council came to help us. Not one. Veltar's voice grew stronger as he spoke. You call humans dangerous because they are willing to fight. But I have seen them fight to protect those who cannot protect themselves. I have seen them sacrifice their lives for strangers. I have seen them stay to help rebuild what was destroyed, asking nothing in return. He turned to face the assembled council members. You call them predators, and you are right. But they are predators who hunt other predators. They are killers who kill to protect the innocent. And in a galaxy where evil exists, where species like the Devourers spread destruction and death, we need guardians who are strong enough to stand against them. The council chamber was completely quiet now. Even Councillor Rezek seemed to be listening carefully. This council speaks of peace, Veltar continued. But you have forgotten that peace must be defended. You have forgotten that sometimes good people must do terrible things to protect what is precious. You have forgotten that the price of civilization is eternal vigilance against those who would destroy it. He looked directly at Admiral Martinez. Humanity has not forgotten these truths. They are shaped by a harsh world that taught them that survival requires strength, and strength must be used to protect the weak. They are exactly what this galaxy needs. Ambassador Veltar turned back to the council. I move that humanity be granted full membership in the Galactic Council, with all rights and responsibilities thereof. Furthermore, I move that they be officially designated as guardians of the peace with authority to respond to distress calls from any member species. The vote that followed was close, but it passed. Humanity was no longer quarantined. They were now protectors of the galaxy, defenders of peaceful civilizations that could not defend themselves. As Admiral Martinez left the council chamber, he thought about Captain Chen and the others who had died at Lyra Prime. They had sacrificed everything to save strangers, never knowing that their actions would change humanity's place in the universe forever. In the years that followed, human ships would patrol the galaxy's borders, ready to respond when peaceful people cried for aid. They would become the guardians that the galaxy needed but had been too afraid to ask for. They had answered the call once, and they would answer it again whenever it came. Because that's what Deathworlders do. They stand between predators and prey no matter the cost. The galaxy was finally safe, watched over by those who knew the true price of peace.